One of the incredible privileges about working with animals in an environment like this is to be out in these insane habitats. Just think, an amazing amount of biodiversity here. These habitats are just teeming with life, and it's so important not just to look after rhino, but to take care of the whole ecosystem. Because this biodiversity, these forests, this clean air is what this world needs more of. Okay, so Chris is reporting that they might have found Tembi and Column. We'll get a bit closer just to verify that, which is possibly good news, because if they are the two that we've just seen, they're in a really nice place. So one of the things that we do to try and limit the risks associated with darting by vehicle and the possibilities that these animals will, when the dart goes in, it's obviously a slightly painful episode and they run away into thickets like this, or even worse, over the horizon. So we are making use of small consumer drones like this one. And this is the backup drone. This is not the main one that's going to be flying. So don't worry, I'm not the pilot today. The idea being that if it does look like the rhino are going to run away from us, we put the drone up and use that to follow them. The drone will not be able to steer them in any direction. It's purely to keep eyes on them from the air so that we don't lose them. Critical part of this is that as soon as the rhino goes down under this anesthetic cocktail, we need to get to them as quick as possible so we can begin to administer drugs. And those drugs are there to try and alleviate the negative side effects of the anesthetic cocktail. And I'll get on to more a little bit later. So as we make an approach to the area that we have seen rhino in, what's going through my head at the moment is you only get one shot when you're darting from a vehicle, because that fright that the rhino gets takes them from a very passive, trusting situation to a very active, distressful situation where they start running away. And the critical thing here is the dart placement has to be done really well. So this is the kind of darts that we'll be using today, 2.5-inch needle to penetrate through a really thick skin. And one of the dangers is that if this needle doesn't penetrate perfectly through the skin so that the tip of the needle injects the drug into a muscle, then that animal, the effects of the drug will either be delayed, or even worse, if the needle blocks, if the needle bends, if the needle breaks off, which can happen, the drug won't be released into this rhino, and they will then run away and not fall over. And that could pose serious danger for them, because we don't know, in the case of a blocked needle, if it might unblock several hours later, and we may not be there to look after that animal. So I'm always a little bit anxious that things can go wrong here, and so we will try and be as careful as we can. Obviously we'll take our time over this. We'll try and make sure that the dart placement is as good as possible, but there are a number of things that can go wrong in the process, and that always just makes the butterflies flutter as we approach to do these things, because there's so much out of our hands and so many unforeseen things that could happen as we go along. Right, so we're just about onto the plains now. And this is the kind of space that we want to work with them in. It's nice and open. We've got people on high points watching over this area, so hopefully when the darting is done, wherever the rhino may run, we'll be able to watch them either from our position here, or from the drone, or from the high points. First 1 or 2 weeks when Andy was hanging out in this watercourse. Yeah. I think the first photograph I had on it.
Dehorn went towards Nyati Valley to look for Colin.
That is Tundi, yes, I do.
This one. Okay, so this is Tundi here that we're just about to make an approach of. Yeah, this is a valley that is it brings back incredibly difficult memories just for me, and I only came here every now and again to do the treatments on Tundi, but Jason and his team were involved with it 24/7 down here. And what strikes me every time about being here is this incredible contrast between this magnificent landscape and the beauty that is here, and then the pain and suffering that this animal endured in this very place, and just how humanity sometimes breaks into these perfect worlds and creates so much havoc. And it's something that stayed with me since 2012. I'll never forget the gut-wrenching emotions that we went through being part of our lives, just on the veterinary team. So I can't imagine what Jason and his team went through when they were busy looking after her and watching over her and not knowing whether she'd make it through the next day. Hey, beautiful girl. Yeah, in spite of that scarring that's there, she is so special, this lady, and all that she represents. Okay, just gonna have a look there. A beautiful giraffe here. Okay, so we're just making a very slow approach. This crash of 4 rhinos sleeping on the road. Don't tell me why, because it looks damn uncomfortable compared to the nice soft grass here. Maybe they're trying to camouflage themselves with the grey background. But they're having a beautiful snooze, so we just want to get close enough to identify who's who here. And then from there we will come up with a plan on what we're going to do first. You tell this.
Daniel, can you hear me?
Okay, sounds like this other vehicle has picked up Colin and he is just sneaking out of the bush line behind us, which is great news. He's coming to join his friends. Okay, awesome. So what I'm going to do in the meantime is just make up a dart. So just to talk you through the ingredients of this dart, there are 3 components we're going to mix in here. First and foremost, the deadly drug, which is very dangerous for humans, is an opioid drug. This has got a potency at least 1,000 times stronger than morphine, so we are very careful when we work with this drug. It's the one that gets the rhino to stop running and to fall over, so we call this the knockdown drug. However, rhino are very, very sensitive to this drug, as are humans, and as soon as it starts to have that effect on them, what it does is suppress their respiratory center, and it suppresses their cardiovascular system. So these animals actually, by the time we get to them, they are severely physiologically compromised. Their blood oxygen levels are way down. We measure 40 or 50%, and we've got a machine here today to help us with that. And unless we give them some drugs to lighten that anesthetic, they will remain at extremely low oxygen levels, so low that we actually don't even know how they survive that. But important to get those oxygen levels up. So that's the main focus of the anesthetic after we get to them, is to start pulling back on this drug so that their hearts beat better, their circulation is better, they're exchanging more oxygen, and they're using less oxygen at the tissue level, at the muscular level.
Action.
Right, so to that we're going to add a tranquilizer called Stresnol. It's called a Zaparone. This is to help alleviate some of the blood pressure issues, and then also complements the action of the opioid so that we don't have to use as much opioid as we would have otherwise. And then Candace has got another drug called Hyalase sitting in the cool box, so we're just going to get that out so we can make it nice and fresh. This is quite an interesting one because this molecule occurs in some strange places in nature, one of them being in snake venom. So we're kind of using it for the same reason as snakes do. We're going to mix it in the dart cocktail so that this molecule pulls these anesthetic drugs from where the dart releases in the muscle into the circulation, because we want it to reach the central nervous system as quick as possible so that they go down as fast as possible and they don't run for long periods of time. So that's what's going to be in the dart, and we'll talk you through the rest of it a little bit later. Just one last thing to add on the mechanics of this. There's a detonator in the back of the dart, so on impact that shock force of it hitting something and drives a plunger forward, hits the detonator, and then that pressure that builds up in the back of the dart will push the rubber bung forward, and that pushes the dart out the front of the needle. See, the needle has tiny little side ports in case the front gets blocked. What we will also do once I finish loading this, I'm going to bend the tip of this needle over a little bit, because these are pachyderms, and the skin where we're darting is at least 1 inch thick, maybe 1.5 inches. So if we leave the front of the dart open, skin can go down this shaft and plug it, and that stops the drug from being released into the muscle. So just by bending it over slightly, we do reduce the chances of that complication happening. Okay.
Yeah.
So this hyalase or hyaluronic acid comes in a powder form, so we just inject some sterile water in here to get it to flush out of the bottle, and then suck that up and add that to the cocktail. Okay, that should do it. Okay, fortunately our rhino are playing ball so far, and they're giving us the time to do this without being in too much of a hurry. So I want to make sure we don't overfill. Okay, that looks good. The tip of the needle over. Just ever so slightly, maybe a bit more than that. Okay. Alright, that looks good to go. The other piece of equipment that we're going to be using is this dart gun or dart projector. It's a gas charged machine. Basically compressed CO2 is what pushes it out, so it's like a glorified blowpipe. Nice thing about this this gun is it's slightly quieter than the other ones, so normally I would say we won't spook the rhino too much. Unfortunately there's so many of them. In this crash, I think we're going to struggle not to spook them. I think they are going to run and be quite upset in the first few minutes of this. So hopefully they don't run too far once they realize that there's nothing more happening to them. Okay, so I'm ready on the drugs. Let me just make sure all these things get out of my way. Then we just need to do a final team check. We know where everyone is. Colin has come out on cue, which is doesn't always happen.
Just keep us between here and the bush line.
Okay. Jason's going to bring us in on a sensible approach line, try and block them from running back to the bush. Then it's just a case of lining up a nice perpendicular shot to a muscle. I'm hoping for a shoulder, neck area, but we'll see. If that doesn't work out, we'll go for a rump. Just remind me who you're looking at again.
That's on the right.
So Rhino have got surprisingly quick reaction, so we want to get into about 25 meters from them. We're on about 30 at the moment, so we're not in a bad place. Talking about this one second from the... Yeah, it's a male. Okay, so we have Colin in our sights. He's in a nice position. Let's check with Jo where she is.
Can you see Colin? We've got him in good position. We give him a shoulder here. Second on the right, if I'm correct.
Got him at 22 meters, which is good.
Second contact.
So, yeah, he's a lot closer than what we thought. I'm just going to drop my gas a little bit to adjust for that. Okay, so everything's lining up nicely. Just about ready to take a shot. We're just going to wait for the shoulder to be a little bit more parallel to us. Got a very nice rump shot here, which I'm tempted to take. Okay, I think we're going to change to rump. So, everyone ready? Here we go.
Okay, dancing. Please keep the eye on moving Rhino.
Okay, so what we have ended up here is just slightly on the wrong side of him. Stopwatch on, Candice. Okay, so now the stressful bit starts. I think turn off Jason. The nice thing is they moved into a really nice position. Collins has run back to where the other crash, members of his crash are, so that's great. But this is where I get really anxious because we've got about 3 minutes to see if that dart has got into a muscle, make sure it hasn't blocked, and make sure no bending has happened underneath the skin. And the way we're going to know that in about 2 to 3 minutes time is we're looking for first symptoms. So the critical thing here is this, as the clock starts ticking, is the distance, the time frame between dart in and first symptoms. And from what I can see at this angle, it looks like the needle sitting very nicely.
Happy for me to call ground teams closer, Will?
Yeah, I think they can come here, yeah.
Chris, coming for Jason, Chris.
What's playing into our favour here is these other rhino are keeping him nice and settled. So he,
Close of that dart. Yep.
a few things I need to get ready. One is a intravenous catheter that we're going to be putting into his ear to give us access. Another one is a syringe and needle ready to drop the first sort of partial wake up, which is called butorphanol. Time there, Candice?
We're on almost 3.
Okay, so at the moment I'm not seeing first symptoms. They're a little bit anxious still. There might be something happening. Looks like we've got good first symptoms, so that's great news. The rest of the crash are keeping him here in a nice open space, so we're kind of out of the danger. So I think, Jason, what we can start doing is going around that side, yeah. Get closer to him. I'm just going to drop some butorphanol. This will be the first drug we give him.
Wayne, when he does go down, it's just approach quietly. We don't want to spook the rest of the rhino too much.
Okay, let's go right around that side. They can get that shot there. I don't mind putting pressure on them now. We can get these other ones to start moving away a bit.
Yes, so they start drive the others off a little bit, come in between the two.
Okay, so Colin's feeling the effect of this drug really badly now. He's staggering and swaying, and he's just about to fall over. I just want to see if we can nudge these guys away without... so what we don't want here is for this lady to interfere with what we're doing. We do need to get her away from Colin. You can see this bond that they have is amazing, how they look after each other. Okay, see if you can slip in here now. Okay, Gabby.
I'm not sure anything like that.
Okay, alright, I'm going to just get out and put the blindfold on quickly. You got blindfold, Candice? Okay, so what we're trying to do here is to just limit the stimulation as early as possible. Hope we don't get into any altercations with other rhino. I'm going to put a blindfold over Colin's eyes. There's my catheter. Don't stand in the Colin. Okay, so that looks looking good. Some earplugs, please. Okay, well, okay. Come on, come on, come on. Next step is just to put some earplugs into his ears. That also limits the stimulation. He's just about to fall over though. I don't want to just stand on me. Okay. Okay, come on. Hopefully someone's watching my back. Alright, boy. Okay. Okay. Down you go. Okay. Good man. Okay, so at this point, Candice can help me with the catheter while I just secure blindfold and get the first drugs in as quick as we can. Because these are immobilization drugs, there is a level of consciousness that animals feel while they're under the effects, and by waking them up a little bit, they also become fairly conscious, and hence the need just to try and block any outside stimulation. Okay, is that looking good? Right, so butorphanol is going in. First 20 milligrams. Ready with that? Okay, black colour nice and dark.
Want me to put another one in?
Yeah, maybe just another one on this ear just to be safe. Okay, there we go. There we go, boy. Good boy. Good boy. Right, you can see his blood colour is already dark. We're going to verify that with the machine as quick as we can. What I'm also going to start doing is giving him a muscle relaxant. The idea behind the muscle relaxant is that when we give him a stronger wake-up drug, hopefully he's not going to stand up and run away from us with too much gusto. What that's going in is a sedative, also a very strong muscle relaxant. Interesting thing about this drug is in humans it causes profound amnesia. So with any luck it does the same to Rhino too, and wipes out all short-term memory of this procedure. Well, we'll see. We'll see one day when we can talk to them in heaven. I will ask them if it really worked. Okay, I'm just going to let those drugs take effect. I'm actually going to give another 10 milligrams of butorphanol, just because of how bad the colour was to begin with. Okay, so this goes in there. Just checking blood colour as we do this. His veins are not playing ball. Okay, there we go. Okay, so blood colour is already starting to improve, which is good. We're going to do an arterial sample in a second and see if we can measure that. Remember those? Okay. Candice, will you monitor anesthetic? Tell me what you think.
54.
54, okay. Right, so we're happy so far. Anesthetic's going well. We're getting things lightened up a little bit. Good. I'm just going to check his blood colour. We've got the ability now, through sponsorship of Abaxis, to be able to measure things at their point of care right next to them, which we could never do before. I wish we had this machine when we were treating Tundi 8 years ago. It can do a whole bunch of things, but the main reason today why we're using it is to take an arterial sample, measure blood oxygen, blood carbon dioxide, and that gives us an idea of how well the respiratory and the cardiovascular system is working. The tricky part of the rhino is you've got to raise an artery, and the arteries sit right inside the ear. So the technique to do that is to rub like crazy until this artery starts to stand up. See it there? It's right inside the ear, and for some strange reason rubbing it like this helps to expose this artery so we can get a sample. So hitting an artery is not as easy as hitting a vein. Looks like we've got some blood coming back, which is good. This is a hippo now syringe, which means as this blood comes back into the syringe, it mixes with an anticoagulant, and that anticoagulant keeps the blood from clotting. You ready? And we can start with the rest of things on Colin. Third drug has just gone in. This is the one that really makes them much lighter. So what this one can do is get them to stand on their feet, which is not ideal for everyone around us, but what I like about that is if they do get up, it means that they can get circulation back into these legs, and that limits the dangers there. What we're looking for with that muscle relaxant is nice wobbly muscles like this. So you can see that drug is starting to kick in nicely, and this gives me an internal indicator that the muscle relaxant is now working. Okay, so we're happy anesthetically, things are on track. We've got the brake rope on. Waiting for some blood tests to come back from the Zoetis machine, and we can start with the dehorning process. As soon as you're done there, get me a heart rate, Candace. Okay, so what is important here is we take a measurement from the base of the horn, from where the keratin starts, there, and somewhere between 8 and 10 centimeters is our mark. So I'm going to start off by marking 8 there, 8 there, 8 centimeters on there. Okay, so there's our guideline. Now, just having a profile look at his horn, decide if I think that 8 centimeters is going to work. Looking at how wide the base is here, I'm going to go a little bit higher. So we're actually going to cut closer to 9, and that's going to be Jason's mark for the first cut. This first cut is really important. What we don't want to do here is cut too close to the sensitive tissues. Okay, my guidelines here. Heart rate 60, so I'm happy with that. I want to check his blood colour now quickly. There, the back one's a little bit more difficult because the measurements are much lower, and we're probably going to have to use a grinder to do most of the heavy work here, but we'll just cut the tip off like that and then use a grinder for the rest. Other thing that's going to help Jason is if we just slide this blindfold around a bit. Okay, who's got stopwatch time there?
1846.
So the reason why we check blood colour so frequently is that the oxygenation in blood causes blood to be either a nice bright red colour, which is what we are starting to see now. If there's low oxygen, then we get a very dark, almost black colour to blood, and that's not good. That tells us the tissues are under an enormous strain because they're not getting good oxygen in there. So this is getting better, not perfect yet. As soon as this last drug, the buprenorphine, kicks in, then it should look a little bit better than that. Okay, we're good to dehorn.
A lot of people question why we dehorn rhino. It's quite a controversial topic. There are a lot of people that are for it and there are a lot of people that are against it. From a Kariega Game Reserve perspective, it was a very easy decision for us. Between 2009 and 2012, we had 5 animals poached. 4 died, 1 survived, and our survivor is Thandi, as you know. Our first line of defense at that time was to dehorn our rhino. We didn't have a fully trained or operating anti-poaching unit. We didn't have the funds to get a fully trained and anti-poaching unit on the ground. So dehorning was our immediate call to action to make sure that our rhino were protected, and it worked. Since then, in the last 8 years, we've made huge strides in rhino conservation broadly, and we now have a multi-layered approach to rhino conservation, with dehorning really only as one of the layers to disincentivize poachers. We do run an active, well-trained, well-resourced anti-poaching unit and canine unit. We do, however, believe that the only sustainable way to really protect rhino in the future is through education and through changing people's hearts and minds and changing behavior. So with that in mind, we run an environmental education program in our surrounding communities where we teach and inform people. We run a social and emotional learning program, which basically gives inner skills to children to help connect them back to themselves and to connect them to nature. And we run a community conservation intern program where we train community members to become trained in wildlife protection services so that they are employed and good people get employed back into the system to protect our animals. So dehorning is one thing we do, it's one layer of what we do. We don't like doing it, we know it's invasive, but really we will do anything it takes to ensure that our rhino remain protected and that no one wants to come onto this reserve and take them. And dehorning is a very, very important part of that process. I want to give you an idea of some of the costs that we are struggling with at the moment. Us and all of our friends and our partners globally, to run an active, engaged anti-poaching unit at the moment at reduced rates is £5,000 a month. Under normal circumstances, when we're operating commercially, it's far higher than that, and that is just the running costs of vehicles, of salaries, of feeding, of ammunition, etc., etc. It does not include any veterinary procedures. A basic dehorning costs £250. A collar is another aspect that needs to be funded. That costs another £250. It doesn't include any training of APU members. It doesn't include any equipment that our APU members need. It's a very, very basic cost that we need to cover on a monthly basis, and other rhino conservation organizations globally. So once again, I'm really pleading that you open your hearts, that you dig very deep into your pockets to support the Rapid Response for Rhinos initiative, because through them you will be supporting so many of these rhino conservation projects to remain active and rhino protected.
Get it under his face, please. Open it up, open it up. Purpose of this, just to catch the filings. Not because they're valuable to us, but because they are valuable to other people. And by law, we need to submit all of these filings with the horns for permit reasons. Okay, how's it look? Looks good. Okay.
Well, let's just whack the side switching.
Okay. Excellent. Okay, so this part is the grinding bit, which takes a bit of time. The purpose here is to try and get as much of this keratin off as possible. Looks a little bit mechanical, but he can't feel anything. We're well away from the sensitive parts of his horn here, so looks bad, but he's got no feeling here. Okay, so we're finished with the grinding. We've taken off as much keratin as we can safely. Important thing here is we've taken away as much incentive to poach as we can from Colin. Anesthetic is working very nicely. I'm going to call Lindy in now to put the collar on. So Linz, why don't you come a bit closer? This is a tracking device that the anti-poaching team use to keep tabs on these rhino and spend more time with them. So thanks once again to Helping Rhinos for making a procedure like this possible. Just another rhino that's got a bit more technology attached. I think let's go a little bit tighter.
Tighter, a little tighter.
Okay, so Lindy's putting the collar on. It's no more difficult than putting a collar on your dog or cat. Obviously it mustn't be too loose and mustn't be too tight, a little bit tighter. So the looser they are, the more they move around and the more they chafe, although it's a very soft chafe.
There we go, that should be good.
The tighter they get, the more risk we have of impeding blood circulation. So that is perfect.
Is that good? Colin is a particularly special rhino to our family. He's not only Tandi's second calf, but he was born on the 24th of January 2017, 4 days after my dad, Colin Rushmere, passed away on the 20th of January. There are a few quite beautiful synchronicities about the story. I was actually with Will having dinner on the night when I heard that when I got the call to say that he had passed away. Will and I go way back to school, and maybe it was a little message from my dad to say that Will and I would have some work to do in the future on behalf of these incredible animals. We were all gathered as a family the night before my dad's funeral. It was very synchronistic that I was actually with Will and his wife Heidi having dinner in Grahamstown when I got the call that my dad had passed away. He was 79 years old, and he had been ill. And it was 4 days later that the whole family had gathered for his funeral in Port Elizabeth, and we weren't actually aware that Tandi was even pregnant, and we got the message that Tandi had a calf and that it was a boy and that we would most certainly name it after my dad. So that is how Colin came to be. So we go to extra lengths to protect every single rhino on this reserve and to play our part to help rhino globally, because more than anything we want this bull to grow to sire many, many offspring, and to live the longest and most happy and peaceful life that he can.
So, one of the things we are obliged to do as part of our national efforts to protect rhino is take a set of DNA samples. The other thing we are doing to Colin today is we are ear notching him, and this is an identification V that we're going to cut into his ear, which I'm just clamping here so that we can limit the bleeding once the cutting starts. We'll just give that a few minutes. So Candice is busy taking blood samples on the other ear here, and those blood samples will go into the central database known as RODIS. There are thousands and thousands of rhino samples that have been sent to the Honest Report lab to compile a DNA database of the whole country's rhino population. We'll use this skin that comes out here to go into that DNA set. We've got blood coming off there. We're going to take some hairs, probably from the tail because they're slightly bigger than these hairs on the fringes of the ears. And then we're also going to take some of these horn shavings and put them in the kit to go for DNA analysis. So that's the DNA sampling side of it. Okay, so the clamp's been on for a little while. I'm just going to cut this piece of skin out. There'll be a little bit of bleeding initially, which will stop quite quickly. We'll see if we can feel it as we're cutting. Just don't want to make this slip. Bending that down. He seems nice and relaxed, does Colin. Okay, chap. Alright. So that little bit of skin goes in with some desiccation granules to dry it out, and that joins the blood, the hair and the horn shavings. Right, so this is going to go on for a few minutes just to keep the blood clotted, and then I'll take that away in about 5 minutes time.
So we're going to be giving antibiotics and some multivitamins just as a precaution, because we don't know if they're sick or not. They can't tell us if they're sick, and just to boost their immunity or their systems after darting. So these are going to go in IM, which is intramuscular, in his butt here. Draw back just to see that you're not in a vein, and inject. That was the first one. 2 more antibiotics. Cool. We're done.
In the very early days after Tandi's poaching, we learned in a very humble and tangible way that rhino conservation was a team sport, and we simply couldn't carry the burden to care for these animals on our own. And the international global community has been incredible at raising funds to ensure that these kinds of procedures can happen, and we supported to do them. So specifically for Colin's dehorning, we'd like to thank Florina and her team from the Durham Towers preschool in Saudi Arabia for raising the funds so that we could do this dehorning, and a huge thank you to Tanya and Gerard West from Dancing for Rhinos, who very, very quickly heeded our call and found the funds for the 3 collars that we needed to proceed with the dehornings today. We're so incredibly grateful to you all. Thank you so much.
Okay, our procedure on Colin the Rhino at Kariega Game Reserve is done. The dehorning is complete. We've fitted the tracking device, we've done DNA samples. We've used the Zoetis blood machine to check his oxygen levels, which have been fantastic all the way through, so he's had a great anesthetic. It's now time to wake him up. Just a final word of thanks to all those of you that have joined us online during this Rapid Response for Rhinos initiative by Helping Rhinos. More importantly, thank you so much for all the support that you give Helping Rhinos over the years. Your support and the care that we feel from abroad is what keeps us going in our fight to save this magnificent species, and it's individuals like this that just show us how resilient they can be if we just give them that little bit of help along the way. So thank you all, especially Helping Rhinos, for the amazing work you do here. I'm going to wake him up now, and that involves an intravenous injection of the final wake-up drug. You can hear him snoring away there. Let's do a last check of his blood colour, which looks very good. Sorry about all the blood here, just because of the ear notch that's bleeding slightly. So in this goes, and we just take off his blindfold, remove his earplugs, and we are away. I'm going to leave him in quiet. Okay, boy. Okay, I'm just going to leave this. Right, let's go. As we watch him wake up, the things we look for now is just that his legs are working. He has been lying back on that back right for quite a while, so he might have pins and needles there. Could take him a little while to feel his leg fully, but he's had a great anesthetic. His blood oxygen levels have been great. Thanks for confirmation by that Zoetis machine. So everything has gone smoothly. We just need final confirmation when he wakes up. He's almost stood on a GoPro camera. Centimeters. And there comes another one.
Oops. Good ball.
So at this stage he's got a bit of tranquilizer in him. Obviously the muscle relaxant, which is a sedative, still working. This is the best moment for me in my work. Wow, it's just amazing, eh? See him wake up in this incredible landscape, listen to all the birds around him. Those little noises he made was to try and get back into communication with the rest of his group. You can see he's got his nose on the ground now, so he's starting to sniff where everyone had been before they moved away. And what he'll now do is he'll start tracking his friends like a bloodhound until he finds them. Okay, so this is always the best part of the job, knowing that anesthetic has gone well, rhinos are safe on their feet, no complications, and we've got the job done thanks to an amazing effort from the team on the ground here, but also don't forget the support of many of you on the other side. So thanks for that. It's an exhilarating feeling knowing that we are winning in this part of Africa so far. Obviously we've got a long way to go, and now more than ever at a time like this we need to pull together, we need to re-establish our connection with the environment. And one of those species that is under enormous pressure because of what we do as humans are these guys. So for today we've done a good thing. Thank you for all being a part of that. We appreciate it very, very much.